What's up, y'all? I'm DJ Nate, and this is the Ben Jarofsky Show. This show is brought to you in part by you, the listeners. As we find our bearings as an independent podcast, we would greatly appreciate your extended support, whether that be regularly listening to our show, sharing this episode, following us on social media, or if you have the means, you can donate at thebenjarofskyshow.com.
Hello again, everybody. Ben Jarofsky here. We're calling this Cheeseheads Speaks Tuesday, and here's why. I forgot what day it is. I forgot where I am. All I know is I'm really excited. So, ladies and gentlemen, Delmarie Cobb is so graciously awaiting. Come on. And we decided to do this show later in the day because we knew we were going to talk. We knew we were going to talk about Wisconsin and the Cheeseheads and what they did today in their big pivotal vote on Supreme Court seat that would decide the balance. Would it go MAGA? Would it go Democrat? Would they deny women in Wisconsin the right to abortions? Or would they allow women to have abortions? Would they carve up the state? Would they allow MAGA to carve up the state so they even had a greater advantage than they already have? Would they allow MAGA to take away the powers of the Democratic governor of that state? Would effectively they continue the MAGA coup that has resulted in Donald Trump being the president of the United States? Would the Cheeseheads of Wisconsin sanction that? A MAGA coup in their beloved state. And I was a little worried. When I was talking to Delmarie earlier today, I got to admit I was worried. Delmarie, I watched baby Donnie Trump go there, do his little baby Donnie thing that he does. Donald Trump sending out all his little, whatever they are, they're not tweets or X's anymore. I don't know what they are, about pounding his chest and how I'm not even going to give the Republican the benefit of saying his name. Delmarie, if you want to say the dude's name, you can. It's a MAGA guy. I don't know. Hang him high, Judge MAGA, unless it's Donald Trump. Oh, then let him walk. And then, of course, the travesty, the fiasco of Elon Musk, the world's richest man, parading around Wisconsin with a cheesehead on and throwing out money to folks. Yeah, blatantly buying votes. Delmarie Cobb's been around Chicago politics a little longer than me, not that much longer, Delmarie, but a little longer. And you know about Chicago, how Republicans always like to say, oh, they cheat, they buy votes. This dude was blatantly buying votes in Wisconsin. Hey, Republicans, you have no shame. I don't want to hear you ever crying about Chicago Democrats ever again after what Elon Musk did. And so it's just that combination. I felt, oh, man, I'm depending on Cheeseheads from Wisconsin to do the right thing. I suddenly was getting nervous. Well, right before we went on the mic, Dave Wasserman, I know you guys all know who Dave Wasserman, because I got political geeks who listen to my show. Thank you, listener Frank. You were the first to break the news. You sent it to me right before we went on. Said, I've seen enough. Susan Crawford defeats Brad, whatever the MAGA man's name is, in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, preserving liberals' 4-3 majority. Wasserman said it. I've seen enough. When he says I've seen enough, Delmarie, I love it when it's the Democrat or the non-MAGA person after that. It could be an independent, okay, as long as it's not a MAGA person. Now, I'm just curious, before I turn things over to Delmarie to get her thoughts, have the Washington Post announced it yet? Nah, they're too wimpy. They still haven't called it yet. But Wasserman says he's seen enough. I'm going with Dave Wasserman. First of all, Delmarie, welcome back. We're going to talk about your 35-year anniversary that you just celebrated. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And your thoughts on what's going down today in Wisconsin, and we'll get to Florida as well, but let's start with Wisconsin.
Well, I certainly hope that Wasserman is correct that Susan Crawford won, and because we really needed that to happen, because we need to be on a roll and reject Donald Trump. We knew, we wouldn't necessarily have any wins in Florida, but considering what we've seen in Pennsylvania last week and now in Wisconsin, at least maintaining the majority, that, and especially after having won that a couple of years ago, is so important that we didn't lose any ground. And that is what was at stake. And then all the other issues, as you outlined in your intro, were at stake. And when you look at what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing to the government, it's just unbelievable. And so Elon Musk, I mean, I just can't believe this in the interview he did when he said, I'm a nice guy. Why would people do this? They must be insane. Something's wrong with them. And I'm like, no, you're the one insane. Something's wrong with you that you don't understand that people are responding to you. People are mirroring you. And that's what they're rejecting. So that just tells you something is very wrong with him.
What you're alluding to is an interview that Elon Musk did with some Fox talking head, and he was like choking up. It was truly one of those bizarre political moments of this last year. Delmarie, this is a man who's so caustic, so aggressive, so nasty, and so arrogant, and his just the power that he has. And now there's a blowback to it. Like, people are angry at him because he's dismantling government, cutting very important services, putting people out of work, endangering families. I know MAGA doesn't care about federal workers, but they are human beings. And they're the backbones of many neighborhoods, Delmarie, in the city of Chicago and in Washington, D.C. I know MAGA doesn't care about them, but after he's done all that to these people, then he starts like I swear to God, Delmarie's tearing up. Their protests, the things they say about me. I'm like, this dude is delusional. This guy's schizophrenic. He behaves one way with utter contempt, Delmarie, and then when people get upset at him, he acts like he's the victim.
Well, that's the MAGA way. So he's absolutely falling right in line, because the MAGA way is to be the victim. Donald Trump's a victim. Elon Musk's a victim. The MAGA people that you're talking about are victims and now they actually are going to be victims because of Donald Trump. And now they're beginning to realize, wait a minute. Oh, USAID? Oh, I didn't understand. When I was on the Jackson campaign in 88, I never will forget. And you remember when Jackson took this phalanx of farmers to the White House. But on the campaign, he met with a group of white farmers, and I was standing there and he was talking to them. And he said to them, you grow corn, and in the projects of Chicago, the kids eat corn flakes. So you need them and they need you. That's how connected we all are. And that's how we have to think about our lives together in this country. And Donald Trump has successfully driven a wedge between people. And so they see themselves as victims. Everybody is after them. Everybody is taking something from them. That's why we got to get rid of DEI. That's why we got to get rid of the migrants. That's why we got to do this. That's why we got to do that. Because they're all taking something from you. And so now that the farmers are actually seeing, some of them, and they're going to see more of this when they start taking more and more and more from them, because they don't understand that the federal government is not something that's way out in Washington on the moon. The federal government is, the tentacles are all over the country, and it affects them every day. And it's Social Security, and it's Medicare, and it's USAID, and it's Veterans benefits, and it's Affordable Care Act, and it's all these things that will affect them every day of their lives.
Yeah. You mentioned the Jackson campaign. I had tended to hold off on that until we get to the your celebration of 35 years. But no, I'm going to go to it right now. And so Jesse Jackson, youngsters, ran for president as a Democrat twice in 84 and 88. His second go around in 88. He surprised everybody in 84. Okay. Now, confession time, Delmarie, don't get mad at me. I was not for him in 84. I was for Harold Washington, and I was pissed off at him, if you want to know the truth. Okay. I got over it by 88. Okay. Harold was dead, and I just had to get on with life. So I was very much for Jesse Jackson in 88. And that's what Delmarie worked for him as press secretary. And I have thought about this. Like, Democrats sit there, what can we do to win over working class America? What can we do to win over those Democrats who are voting Republican? And I always think, like, hello, Jesse Lewis Jackson, presidential campaign, 1988, Bernie before Bernie, 20 years before Bernie, why don't you just talk a little bit about Jesse's platform, how he ran? I know white people could not deal with him in 88. That was too much for them. I understand that. But talk about it. Go ahead.
But a lot of white people did vote for him. And one of the things we did is, I never will forget, Carol Maureen showed up in Hazard, Kentucky. Jesse Jackson was at a high school talking to all white kids in the high school about the importance of voting. And Hazard, Kentucky is the heart of Appalachia. And there was no place he didn't go to talk to voters, to connect, to show them how we're all in this together. There is no us versus them, you versus me. It's all of us together. And in fact, what's so interesting about that is we're having this conversation. That's the very topic Senator Cory Booker is filibustering on right this minute as we're speaking. He's talking about we're all in this together, and that we need to understand who the enemy is. And the enemy is not us.
Yeah.
The enemy is the person who's trying to divide us.
I'm so glad you brought up Cory Booker. That was something you and I have been talking about all day today. I've been sending you updates. I actually do believe he stopped his speech. Technically, we were all calling it a filibuster, but technically it wasn't a filibuster. But he was he just took control of the Senate floor and talked for over 24 hours. And I believe I sent this to you. The moment when he broke the filibuster record, which was set by a senator named Strom Thurmond. And Strom Thurmond was one of the most racist senators, and I know that's saying a lot, Delmarie, in the history of the United States Senate. It turned out he had I don't know if you know this, but he had a black daughter. So
did a lot of the founding fathers.
Yes.
Founding fathers.
They were fathering something. Yes. And, so that just shows you how twisted and demented he was. Ardent racist, said that some of the most horrific things about black people in his career. Was a Democrat when he began, broke from the Democrats in 48 over the issue of integration because Truman was integrating the Army, and Hubert Humphrey this ancient history, was fighting for a civil rights plank in the 48 Democratic Convention. I wasn't even born yet, but I know things that happened before I was born. And into the 60s, ardent segregationist, and he spoke for 24 hours as a filibuster to LBJ's civil rights bill, and that had been the record. And Cory Booker held the floor for beyond that, just to stick it to Strom Thurmond and hold the record. And when they announced, I think it was Schumer announced that he broke the record, Cory Booker started to cry. And I'm just an old sap. I'm an old baby boomer. Go easy on me, young lefties. But I was tearing up myself, Delmarie. And if he announced his campaign for president there, I said, run, Cory, run. That's how excited I was. But talk a little bit about what you thought about Cory Booker's, the symbolism of what he just did today. Go ahead.
It's so funny you said that, because I thought the same thing about him running. I'm like, this is a prelude to him running for president again. Because, he did something today that was so significant, and especially just listening to what he was saying. And again, what he was saying is, we are all in this together. And it goes back to even Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. You don't ask what your country can do for you. You ask what you can do for your country. That's what we're all supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be looking at the government as the enemy. The government is not the enemy. Yes, we understand. We fall out. Nobody is perfect. Nobody likes everything that everybody does. And we certainly don't like everything that government does. Slavery was government sanctioned. So, understand. But the idea is the power is with the people. People have the power to change what the government does, but do it in a way that is thoughtful, that is lawful, and that is productive. And what we're seeing in this administration is none of those things.
Yeah, by the way, the New York Times finally caught up to Washington. It took you guys long enough. They called it liberal wins Wisconsin court race despite Musk's millions. Susan Crawford defeated that MAGA guy, whatever his name is, for a state Supreme Court seat in a race that shattered spending records and maintained a liberal majority in the court. Oh, it's New York Times. Way to stick your neck out after Crawford did it an hour ago. A little nervous on New York Times. So, yeah, no, it was I was, in 2019, I was a Bernie guy, and I didn't really get into Cory Booker's campaign that much. I had an intern at the time. She was really into Booker, and I look back at it now. She may have saw something that I didn't see, but I was motivated by, because you're right. Just the notion of appealing to something bigger and greater than us, and taking that strong stand against MAGA. And just letting the world know that he's not going to back down. So many people are backing down. So many law firms right now are backing down. Bill Maher's wimping out. Mr. Politically incorrect is suddenly being politically correct and sucking up to Trump. It's really embarrassing, Delmarie. So I give Cory Booker credit, for doing that.
No, the thing he said, the speech he gave, and I wrote about this, the speech he gave for during Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination, that was powerful. This speech was powerful, and I don't say that someone should be president or run for president because they can give a good speech, but you have to listen to what somebody says, because that is an indication of what they believe. And we have got to start as Democrats. You and I were talking about this. I know there are people who are angry the Democrats aren't doing enough and all of this. But again, it's not about what they're doing. They're not supposed to be leading us. We're supposed to be leading them. And so let them do whatever it is they're doing. And in the meantime, we're supposed to be doing what we're comfortable doing. For some people, it's a Tesla takedown. For other people, it's what I do. I write. That's me. I also will, I'm very outspoken. You're very outspoken. For other people, it's phone banking. It might be knocking on doors. It might be a boycott of the companies that decided they were going to get rid of their DEI policies. But there's something you can do, and we should all be doing it. And I'm so happy that people are targeting Elon Musk, because they're using the power that they have. And I don't mean, torching cars and things like that. That's a bridge too far as I'm concerned. But you still have the power to not buy the car, to boycott, to protest in front of these locations, to make it uncomfortable for people who have the car, feeling like, wait a minute, I don't know that I want to be seen in this. And people are returning their cars and turning them in, because the only thing Elon Musk is going to understand is if his pocketbook is hit. And that's what people are doing. And he never thought that would happen. And so we're looking at the stocks tumble. And that is what's getting him about to tear up, is because he's seeing his fortune disappear in front of his eyes.
Well, he's got a ways to go before it disappears, but your point's well taken.
Right, but it's dropping.
It's dropping. Yeah, that got him crying. That's why he's sobbing.
Because he can't give away millions. So I won't be able to give away $1 million for somebody to vote.
All right. So you touched on Musk. So I'm going to name 3 issues that I thought were at play in this Wisconsin showdown, and also in Florida. Again, the 2 vacant congressional seats were in Republican districts, and which Donald Trump won with over 60% of the vote. So these are heavy Republican districts, and in each case, the Democratic challenger got over 40% of the vote. So the Democratic challenger outperformed Kamala Harris. significantly in these districts. So that's a cause of concern, as Delmarie always points out. It's not just the margins you win in your base, it's the margins you lose by in the other team's base. We generally talk about this with the Republican strategy of trying to discourage black people from voting. This is one of Delmarie's favorite themes. It apparently was at play in Florida, Delmarie, because that Republican vote dropped. So here are the issues that you've touched on. I'd love to see you go into a little more detail on all of them. One, Musk. He's the personification of the federal cuts. Two, the issue of abortion. And three, it's a little more of a challenge, DEI. So you already touched on Musk. Why don't you talk about the issue of abortion and how it played in this election?
Well, what we saw in the presidential election is that, it was just unbelievable, because what we had seen in the election years leading up to 2024 were white women turning out en masse, voting for reproductive rights. And then all of a sudden in 2024, we see white women vote for reproductive rights. For reproductive rights and against Kamala Harris. And it's like, wait a minute, how does that make sense? And so you figure, I guess they figure, well, Dobbs is done. Trump's going to be president. Well, we'll just protect our state, and the rest of the country, oh, well. And it's like somehow they don't connect the dots. This is the man who returned reproductive rights to the states, who took pride in it, who brags about it, who talked about the Supreme Court. And imagine if he has a vacancy while he's the president this time. So how is it that you're not connecting the dots to understand what's at stake here? This is not over. That fight isn't over. That fight is still ongoing, which is why this election today in Wisconsin was so important.
And DEI, what impact do you think that had on these races?
Well, and the DEI, what's so bad about that is that, again, people don't connect the dots. And I wrote a column about this not long ago, that white women became firefighters because of affirmative action, that short white men became law enforcement officials because you had to be 6 feet tall before affirmative action. So you could be 5'7" and be in law enforcement because of affirmative action. So affirmative action didn't just help Black people. It helped a lot of people. And so the idea that you've made affirmative action and DEI the boogeyman and not understand that opens the door for everybody. All these things that we're talking about that are at stake now because you're dismantling affirmative action and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that's why when you have the plane crash in Washington that killed all those people, first thing you say is this DEI, but it's okay to have mediocre white men running the country who put a journalist on a chat chain about a war,
Wow.
a military attack. That's okay
Yeah.
because that's not DEI.
Yeah.
That's meritocracy.
Yeah, that's meritocracy. What a joke. God damn, I hadn't tied those two together, but that is a good point. So just coincidentally, one of the white men on that chat chain was Mike Walls, who was a congressman in Florida. He vacated his seat to become some flunky for Donald Trump. And because that's all they are, flunkies for Donald Trump. And it was his seat. He won with well over 60% of the vote, and it was his seat that Republicans held. One of the two seats they held in Florida was for him, right? What a joke that was. I don't know. You know what? I don't know what role that played in Wisconsin, so I'll hold off until I see some analysis and some polling, et cetera, and so forth. But it really does expose, you're absolutely correct, the hypocrisy of the MAGA movement's war against DEI when they're saying they're doing it to promote meritocracy, to promote the notion of high achievers being selected to positions of power in our country to make our country great again. And Donald Trump has clearly chosen the bootlickers. So anybody with an honest mind, anybody who has got any kind of reputation, anybody who dares to say no to Donnie, they're not getting the job. The only way to get the job is to kiss his ring. And oh my goodness, Delmarie, these law firms, I could go on and on. Harold Washington was so right. He said this to me in the office. He said these municipal bond deals are not that hard. And I'm not going to imitate Harold, but he was like, you could go to any law office in Cottage Grove Avenue and find a lawyer who could do those bond deals. And I'm going to start They act like you got to be like a legal genius, Felix Frankfurter, to handle a bond deal. Do you follow what I'm saying? And it's all a matter of clout and doling out. Go ahead.
And he did, because that was actually how I first met Fredrina Lyle. It was her firm that was doing the bond deals. It was the first Black firm to get the municipal bond deal.
Yeah. And
of course, once Daley came in, that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. They let a couple Black guys get in on it, but that's it. But that's my point. My point is, when it's a white person doing the job, they act like it's the smartest man in the world. What a brilliant legal analyst. And when a Black person does the job, they're like, oh, well, he only got the job because he's Black.
Right.
Well, why do you think these goofballs on that chain got the job, who were sending their emails or their messages to the reporter? They got the job because they were sucking up to Trump, right? Where's the meritocracy in that?
Exactly. And the shame of that is that we have these people running the country who clearly are not the sharpest knives in the drawer by any means, and we don't see that the well-being of the country is at stake, and that means everybody. I mean, when you talk about Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, the idea that he's running the health department, give me a break. I mean, we are all at risk. It is not just a few of us at risk. And the fact that they have perpetuated this lie, and this is why it's so important for independent media, because independent media is the only thing we are going to be able to depend on, for the very reasons you brought up in terms of the law firms. You're now seeing major media bend and cower down to Donald Trump, and instead of standing up and fight. And so it's going to have to be independent media like The Atlantic, and you don't think of it necessarily as an independent media, but the idea is he brought that to light.
Yeah.
And the first thing they tried to do was disparage him. And they forced his hand because he had no other choice but to show what they sent out. Because had he been the better person, which is what they were depending on, is that he would be the better person and say, well, okay, I won't show this. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna take your bluff.
Yeah, I know most of my listeners know what you're talking about, but just in case you don't, Jeffrey Goldberg, the reporter, or I think he's the editor of the Atlantic,
right.
He was the one who was I guess inadvertently put on the text message or whatever it was, and saw all these plans, and he wrote about it, but he didn't put the actual plans in there because he was playing by rules. Like, well, this is information that should not be shared, even though they did share it, and he was playing by like the protocol. And then they trashed him, and they said, there were no war plans there. He just exaggerated. He said, okay, you gonna play that game? And he put out the plans, and they're like, habba. They start changing their tune.
Right,
and these guys are such clowns. Oh my goodness. And they've taken control of this country.
But
come on, America.
But now we have to question, had it not been the Atlantic, would the other media have told the story, or would the other media have called the president and told him this is what happened by mistake, and we never would have found out? And so that's what's at stake here when people start cowering to this man, is that we don't know what might be hidden and what might be reported on.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm going to give a little love. I want to see what you say about this. Some of my people who come on my show, and some of my listeners have dropped their Washington Post subscription because Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, is playing that little wow. His knees are wobbling, and he's sucking up to Trump, as is Zuckerberg, as most of the big tech tycoons. And he has ordered or commanded some of the editorial writers on the editorial board not to write various editorials, like he wouldn't let them endorse Kamala Harris. And so many of my friends have said, I'm through with the Washington Post. I've still subscribed to the Post. I think their national coverage is, for a mainstream, is very fair, in my humble opinion. And they're not giving Trump, in my opinion, on their net. With all the biases that I see built into mainstream media, I understand all that stuff. I've been on the left my whole life, so I understand the biases that are baked into this beast. Nonetheless, I feel they're holding him accountable. And when he says something that's not true, they make it clear that it's not true. This is my read of it. That's my take on the Washington Post. I'm still subscribing to it. I'm still reading it. I haven't quit just because Bezos, his knees are not knocking, and he's forcing editorials. He's editing editorials. Your thoughts on the Washington Post?
Well, I actually, my family was subscribed to the Sun-Times my entire life. So my entire life, I saw the Sun-Times delivered to my door. And then during the 2008 campaign, there was a cartoon of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. And it was a steamroller with Barack Obama on the steamroller rolling over Hillary, but they had her dressed as a witch. And the steamroller was rolling over her heading to the White House. Now, I stopped our subscription, and I stopped it for years. I only recently went back a few years ago, but I know I probably stopped it for over 5 years. And I called them and wrote them and told them why, because I wanted them to know. Because there's nothing wrong with the cartoon. I understood the cartoon, but why does she have to be a witch? And so that was what I objected to. And that was going too far. And so I do think you have to make statements. And I do think there needs to be repercussions. And I do think people have to make their feelings heard. Yeah. And I did see something recently where they were there was some kind of little ad or something where they were trying to get subscribers, online subscribers and stuff. And I want them to feel the pain. Now, that doesn't mean you need to feel it forever, but you do need to feel it for a little bit, because people need to voice their opinion, that some things are out of bounds.
That I hear you. I stayed loyal to the Sun-Times throughout. And I know I looked the other way at that cartoon because I was rooting for Obama. So I admit I'm culpable in that regard. I still subscribe to the Bright One. I've been subscribing to the Bright One, going back to my parents since 1966. And I reserve the right to criticize them because I'm a loyal subscriber. And I know you probably don't want to go down this path, but their coverage of Brandon Johnson is so blatantly unfair and biased. I know we're talking national issues, but it's laughable.
No, I know.
They're blatant, like cheering for him to lose. And I've seen it now with 4 black mayors. And I'm so sick of seeing it in the city of Chicago. And then they act like they're surprised when you call them on it.
Oh, I know.
But they did it to Harold. They did it to Eugene Sawyer. They did it to Lori Lightfoot. And they did it. And by the way, some of these mayors I didn't even support. But I saw what they did to Lori Lightfoot.
Exactly.
And they're doing it to Brandon Johnson probably worse than any of these. So,
no,
Delmarie, I
100%. I agree with you 100%. And of course, I'm being interviewed by all of them on, well, how do you think Brandon's doing? And so, and you have the Wall Street Journal, which is calling him the worst mayor in the country, like, oh, give me a break. And so for me, it's just an opportunity to be extremely honest with them and let them see, look at all the things you turned your eyes to. Yeah. Look at all the things you allowed to happen under Daley and Rahm Emanuel that you didn't have any problem with whatsoever. But now all of a sudden, you have all these problems, and he's the worst mayor in the country. And how is that possible?
What a joke. Hello, Wall Street Journal. I know you're in New York. Ever heard of Eric Adams? Okay. The dude was indicted. He only got off because he sucked up to Trump. So,
exactly.
Oh my God. All right. I didn't want to go down the path locally, but you got me going when you started talking about the Bright One. So I'm still a loyal subscriber, Bright One, but just barely hanging on.
I know I'm a subscriber. I'm back, and I'm a subscriber to both of them, and the Tribune and the Sun-Times, because I have to be. But like I said, I made my voice heard. I let them know that here's something, obviously we had I don't know how many years we had a subscription. It had to be over 40 years. And I just said, nope, I'm not doing it.
So I just got a text from my dear friend, Mick Dumke. And I know you are a fan of Mick's as well. And he goes, Dems finally woke up in Wisconsin a little too late. Mick, you're not here, but I'm pushing back a little bit. And Delmarie knows where I'm going to go. So to me, this vote just underscores the Delmarie Cobb theory of the Kamala Harris. I give you the credit, Delmarie. I'm taking all the abuse for it, by the way, because I keep saying it. You haven't. I'm the one who's always saying it. People disagree with me because no one agrees with me on this. There's no doubt in my mind she lost because she's a black woman, and that America voted for this grifter, demented grifter, over Kamala Harris because they just could not bring themselves to vote for a black woman. And so when I look at the margin of victory for a white woman for Supreme Court in Wisconsin and think about Donald Trump beating Kamala Harris, to me that just underscores your thesis, all right, which you articulated. She did it in July, ladies and gentlemen. So are you still standing by that thesis, or are you more Mick Dumke-esque and saying, no, Ben, you're wrong to exaggerate it, and the Democrats got smarter than they were in November? Go ahead.
No, and the problem I have, Ben, is that the Democrats don't want to admit it and keep trying to come up with every other excuse other than that. They want to say it's eggs. They want to say we're elite. They want to say we're more educated. They want to say we have money. They want to say all these other things other than the fact that the only times Donald Trump lost or won was against a woman. Yeah. He won against Hillary. He won against Kamala Harris. He lost to a white man.
A demented white man? Sleepy Joe, man.
But he lost during COVID. So he lost when somebody couldn't even come out and campaign to a white man. He won against the most well-known white woman on the face of the earth. And then he won against a black woman who was vice president. And in a successful administration. I don't care how many times they want to say that Joe Biden's administration was horrible. It was not horrible. This is horrible. What we're facing right now.
Oh my goodness! Don't make me laugh. It's not funny, but it is funny. Will I go so far as to say I could have beat Donald Trump in Wisconsin? I wouldn't even campaign, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm too lazy. I would just every now and go, oh, he's so full of shit, people. You don't even believe it. And people would have gone, yeah, well, at least he's honest.
Exactly.
I think I may have done as well as Kamala. And I'm nothing. I never run for office or anything.
And I tell you, and I really have such a problem with that, because what it shows as a Black person, and this again is going to hurt Democrats if we don't get our act together, because this is something Black people live with every day. And that is, any support there is for us is always temporary. And so what you saw was immediately people like Rahm Emanuel suddenly bubbling up to the top, because we got to stop all this woke talk. We got to stop all this DEI talk. So whatever progress we made, and this has been since the beginning of time, ever since Black people have been to this country, whatever progress we make, something happens and pull it back. And then we make a little more progress, something happens, and then pull it back. And then we make a little more progress and something, and pull it back. That is all we have ever seen in this country, is that something happens, we make a little progress, white folks get intimidated, and then pull it back because it's all their fault. And so it happens over and over and over. And Black people have seen this pattern forever.
Yeah.
And so these are the people supposed to be for us. These are the people who are supposed to understand us. These are the people who are supposed to support our issues and policies. And these are the people who are the most fair weather of all the other people, because we know where the other people stand. Yeah. We know where the MAGA people stand. They don't give a damn about us. But you're supposed to be our friend.
Yeah. Wow. It's right in your face. We'll hold this off for another time. But I emphasize the woman part of Black woman, because yes, Trump won the Electoral College against Hillary, obviously. That's why he got to be president. But she still beat him in the popular vote. And Kamala lost the popular vote to that grifter. Now, it's true, he didn't get 50%. He keeps talking about his mandate. He didn't even get 50%, all right? But he got more votes than her, and I just think, it's that combination. So I think Cory Booker could have beat Donald Trump. I do believe it. I don't believe voting for a Black man is as intimidating as voting for a Black woman.
No, I agree with you. You know, I told you that about Barack Obama. I said he is a man. And I always say, remember, Black men got the vote before women, before white women. And so that tells you what kind of country we are. And so nothing has changed. And I agree with you 100% about that, a Black man could have probably beaten Donald Trump. But
I believe that, yeah.
But we still have a problem with women in this country. And we certainly have a problem with Black women in this country.
Yeah, just look what they're doing to Stacey Davis Gates in this city. All right, before I go, I'm going to avoid that. All right, we'll close with this. Why don't you talk a little bit about the 35th? Is it 35? I got 35 in my mind.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, when I was a lot younger, I came to Chicago, and there was a woman named Delmarie Cobb, and I'd be calling her up. She was doing publicity work for various candidates that I'd be writing about. You had to get through Delmarie to get to the candidate. And she was like the mama bear protecting those people. And I can't believe I was looking. She put out Delmarie has a newsletter. I want you to give people all the info if they want to subscribe to that, Delmarie. But today you did a tribute to your 35th anniversary of your firm. And there were all these pictures that brought back memories, back to the 80s and the Jesse Jackson campaign. And so why don't you talk a little bit about this anniversary? Go ahead.
Well, you know, it was interesting because, as I said in the column, I started my business on April Fool's Day. And I've often joked, was the joke on me? But I've stayed in business all this time. And I my mother had to put it in perspective for me years ago when I was like, oh, woe is me. I'm not where I want to be. And it's been 10 years. And my mother was like, look at what you've done. Look at how far you've come. You have nothing to be upset about. And then I was like, oh, okay. And so that's what this was me really looking back at 35 years and saying, when you look at my career overall, it really has been a good career, especially when, and I say this, I've never had a political godfather or godmother. And so I've really done this because I've had some connections who've helped me over the years and on my own. And so it's been rough because as a Black woman in this field, it hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for a moment. And as you said, I was going through those pictures. I had forgot about those pictures. And when I started seeing them, I was like, oh, wow. I didn't know I had this picture. Oh, wow. So it was I had to do it quickly, but it was a wonderful romp down memory lane.
And if folks want to get your newsletter, how do they get it?
Well, the best way is to subscribe to my PAC, which is Ida's Legacy, www.idaslegacy.com, and go to the bottom of the page, and there you can subscribe right there, and then you'll get the information about my PAC, and you'll also get my newsletter.
Got it. Delmarie Cobb, ladies and gentlemen, DelmarieCobb. There you go. I spelled it for you. It's not two. I made that mistake for like 10 years. It's one word, okay? It took me like 10 years. Wait a minute. I think it's just one word. I have issues, Delmarie, but I'm coping with it. All right. Thank you very much, Delmarie, coming on election night. Our coverage is second to none. And good night, I think. It's been a really rough 2 months, but
we got to win.
Tonight was a good night.
Yep.
Say that we got to win tonight in two very close races. One last breaking news from listener Frank. Thank you so much, Frank. He scoops them all. He scoops the networks and everything. Well, he's actually not scooping He's citing Capital Facts, so shout out. Capital Facts. A source close to Aurora mayoral candidate John Lesh says Lesh will take the stage soon to declare victory over Richard Irvin. Now, folks, remember that name, Richard Irvin, the mayor of Aurora? Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I knew Delmarie would need to know.
News.
Yeah, Richard Irvin lost in Aurora, and that was Richard Irvin, of course, was the candidate. His like a lifelong moderate. I don't even think of him as a Democrat or Republican. All of a sudden, he's trying to package himself as a MAGA man. And then he played that awful commercial. Remember that one? He goes, people that look like me but think like us. I'm like, God, man, that's like straight out of Get Out. And anyway, he lost the primary to because MAGA people said, we're not voting for you. We're voting for the real MAGA man, Darren Bailey. And now apparently he's lost in Aurora too. So there's a lesson in there somewhere, Delmarie. Anyway, thanks so much, Delmarie. What'd you say?
I said, stick to your principles.
Stick to your principles, if you got any. All right, very good. Delmarie Cobb, thank you very much. I also want to thank producer Nate. DJ Nate, he does a great job. Give yourself a raise, DJ. Take it out of petty cash. Peace and love, everybody.